Allie here with the Ninja Network and the Ninja's Way podcast. We have Miss Sandy Zimmerman on with us today. She has many awesome titles, from the first mom to hit a buzzer on American Ninja Warrior to speaker and TED Talk presenter. And so we're going to dive into some stuff today about Sandy. Thanks so much for coming on and doing this interview with me today.
Yeah, appreciate you having me here, and hopefully I can give a few little nuggets of gold here for everybody listening.
Yeah, absolutely. I first just want to start out with, you have your TED Talk that I watched, which is awesome, by the way. If you guys
Mhm.
haven't seen it, you have to go check it out. We talk a lot about just dreaming big dreams. So, why don't you just give us a little intro to what that is and what that means to you?
Okay. I think we all have moments in our life that are really pivotal. They call them hinge moments that just change everything going forward. And for me, one of those moments was when I was little with my sensei. That was actually the first taste for me of athletics and competition. I was 6 years old when I first started judo and was introduced to it, and I entered my first tournament when I was 7. And after that, I don't know if there was much looking back from that until the point where I was just something that I really excelled at. It was something that came really naturally.
Mm.
I know a lot of people, the thought of being thrown as hard as you can on your back or doing that to someone else and then doing chokes and arm bars and submission does not sound fun to everyday people. But for me, it was just such an incredible sport to pick up and the life lessons that went with it. I grew up poor and on welfare and spent time in the foster care system. And what was so incredible about Sensei, anyone who is a coach who has that drive and that desire to invest in our youth will understand this. But Sensei saw something in me that I couldn't see yet. And I think a lot of people saw a poor kid that grew up on welfare and that spent time in the foster care system. But Sensei did not see me through that lens, and I think it was so powerful to have someone like that saw beyond my circumstances that I was currently in, and somehow he got me to the point where not only did I make it to nationals, which was a miracle in itself, but to win nationals, and standing there with that trophy, that big moment for me was when he came over, and since he was so excited and he says, "Sandy, you could go to the Olympics." And they were gonna be introducing it as an Olympic sport,
Mm.
and I was so embarrassed at his words, cheeks flush and warm, because I just didn't see myself as a possible Olympian, not even close, but that I just for a moment got to see myself through his lens and through the potential that he thought I had. It was a game changer for me, a game changer in all aspects of my life, and I think that's what's so special about sport is when you can learn that lesson on the court, on the mat, on the field, whatever your sport is, it trickles over into the rest of your life. So what sensei taught me in judo was to dream big and that there were no limitations based on where you came from or what you've been through. And so that has just trickled over into everything, into my career as a teacher and a coach, into my speaking career now. And I try to breathe that life into the athletes that I get to work with.
Mm. I love that language. I was just gonna say, since he breathed life into you in that moment and spoke those words of encouragement to you to maybe break some limiting beliefs that you had about yourself and what you thought was possible. And I also have a background in judo. My uncle had a kickboxing gym, and I
Mm.
was kids coaching kids judo classes when I was like 11 years old. And that got me on my start too. So that's cool that we have that in common. But this concept of dreaming big dreams, and really specifically talking to your experience as a parent, people who have their kids in ninja and are doing competitive ninja right now, what are maybe some things that, the parents can do for their kids to help support them in those moments of either at like big competitions, or even if just like showing up daily to practice? What kind of advice would you give to a parent who's like, how can I help my kid with this idea of dreaming big dreams?
Yeah, a few things came to mind, and I think some of them might be a little shocking for people. But I think one great blessing that parents can do for their kids is to not push it.
Mm,
I think so many times, and I have had to fight the same thing in with my own kids. is that when you push it and they are not the ones really wanting it, sometimes it well, I not sometimes, I think it absolutely at some point will backfire.
Mm,
And so what I would really encourage parents to do is to be present, to be supportive, to encourage them, but to not push it. And
yeah.
luckily, hopefully they have a coach that can be more of maybe that role of really challenging them and really pushing them. But the big thing that we talk about in our house quite a bit is that I will match your commitment, your dedication
Mm,
to whatever your dream and goal is. And I'm not going to care about it more than you. And sometimes as a parent, that is one of the most difficult things to do because we know in hindsight, we have the wisdom and the life experience to know things like if you put in the hard work and you put in the time, you're going to excel at whatever it is.
mm,
And that is really tough when you see your kid and you feel like, boy, they could really go in and get some more practice in. They could really go in and get some more reps in or whatever it is that will help them in their journey. It's so hard not to push that, but I think that can really come back to haunt you.
true.
And it really has to be the kids that this is their dream and that this is what they want. And so one piece of advice I would give would to not push so much
Mm,
because what will happen is you wanna wait till they get to the point where they're inviting you in, and I can see that with my kids now and some of the other sports where they're just now, if you don't push too much, then they actually invite you in. If you push too much, then they ask you to leave. And
sure.
so as a parent, you really gotta consider that. The other thing that I would give coaches as advice would be, and I am guilty of this, that we have to be really careful to not let the competition of a sport rob us of the joy of the sport.
Mm,
And I am, well, if any of you have ever watched me know, I'm
yeah.
ferociously competitive. And I think sometimes what can happen is that competition piece can rob us of the joy. And I
Absolutely.
think that they can absolutely go hand in hand, that we can find so much joy in the journey and in seeing growth, not just in our sport and our skills, but also just in our confidence, in our resilience, in our grit, in our goal setting, all of those things to be able to look at that and feel really proud and really get a lot of joy out of also the relationships that you make
Yeah.
along the way. But that would be another piece of advice that I would give is do not let the competition of a sport rob you of the joy of the sport. We do it because it's fun. We
Yeah.
should.
Absolutely, and I love that advice, and something that you spoke to was like, okay, parents, don't push, get to the point where they can invite you in, and there is a role for that, right? That's where a coach can come in or sensei can come in and provide that push and provide that fire for an athlete and maybe a better, more supportive way, and I'm sure you've had kids your kids try all types of different sports, but when seeking out a sport, whether it's ninja or any other type of sport, when we're looking at either the program or the coaches to be these role models and set these examples, is there anything specific that you look for of how do you know that it is that right person to come alongside your kid and be that supportive person?
One thing that it's been a really interesting just traveling country and going to different ninja gyms. And I will tell you, every ninja gym has a different feel.
Mm,
And when you go
yeah,
in, there's different things. And you can immediately, if you're really looking for it, you can get a sense for what they value, what their core values are. And a lot of them, I think if they're a great gym, they have those core values somewhere up where they're visible.
mm,
And what is it that drives us every single day here in this gym? What do we value? And I think that looking for those core values and that they align with what you want. I'm thinking about my basketball program and how we have 4 core values, and every decision that I make with this team, whether it's practice, whether it's a game, whether it's a conversation with a parent, a child, and a player, I try to remember these core values, and if I had advice for parents and for gyms, it would be to what are your core values? And really sit down and what are those 3 or 4 things that are just absolute must, non-negotiable for you and what you want your kid to experience, or if you're running a gym, what you want people to feel like when they come in. You
yeah,
gyms have an absolute feel. And so, like with our basketball team, what I did is I took a sheet and I remember just sitting down one of those, like, what are the things that I want kids to walk away from in my program? And I just started a long list and it was a whole sheet full, but things that I want kids to leave if they come in, think how I want them to feel when they walk into our program. And so then what I did from that long list, because that was way too many, you got to really get it down
Yep.
to about three.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
I couldn't, so I stayed with four. But our
Mm,
core four values, for example, one is to compete. And I think that's a really valuable thing, both on the court or on the course or in life, is that we are putting in all the hard work physically and mentally to compete. We're going to get
uh,
after it. And then the other thing, another one I have is relationships are a huge core value of mine. When I am thinking about how I interact with parents and how I interact with my players or athletes that I'm working with, I value relationship. And that's really important to me. Another one is that we have joy,
mm.
that we don't lose the joy in this. I want people, if they walked into one of my practices or training, that they're going to feel these core values. And I think those are really important. The fourth, is mindset.
Mm,
And I work that in every single practice. We actually start every practice with what I call moment of motivation. And it's not much because that's people's attention span is short anyways, but it might be a 2 to 3 minute story with a lesson on mindset.
mm.
And those are our 4 core values, and if someone came into our program, they probably wouldn't even have to ask what our core values are, they would feel them. They would
Yeah.
see them, they would just know it that we value those things. So I think when you're looking for a program as a parent, what is it you want your kid to take away? And how what experience do you want? And as a gym owner, what is it that you want? You better teach it. Your employees better know it,
Yep.
it's not just something that you throw up on the wall one day, but every single day, those 4 values are preached. They hear it, they live it in everything that we do.
Yeah, and I love what you said earlier because this is exactly how I describe it as well, is your core values are a filter to the actions that you do. And if you look at your core value as a filter, it's easier to establish what those are, right? You're like, "Oh, I have this long list. How am I gonna consolidate this down?" But looking at it as a filter of everything that you do in your facility or with your students needs to come out of these core values. I think there's some great nuggets in there for gym owners as well. It is have to be integrated and all of those things. I think your little mindset motivation, like that is a excellent way to engage more of the mental part. It's not just about physically helping kids. It's about hitting them on mentally helping them and physically helping them and spiritually helping them, right? And trying to hit these different aspects. And I think programs that can consider those things first, right? It's not just about creating better athletes, but better human beings.
I love that. Absolutely. Isn't that the goal? I mean, I just think
Mm,
you think about what is it that you wanna leave here on earth when you're done and what is gonna be your legacy, and I just think it's all the people. That's a no-brainer.
mm.
Like, if something you do or something you say can help change the trajectory of someone's life, or it's just a little lesson that they can take with them going forward, then that's what this is all about for me.
Yeah. And those things are eternal, right? All the money and the success and all those things that you're not going to have that at the end of the life, but you will have the impact that you've been able to create through these relationships. I watched an interview that you had did, and you were talking about how you have this picture on your desk that's before Ninja Warrior, right? So, what do you feel is unique about Ninja that, like, that's what made it your before and after kind of story?
Well, it's funny in life where that really wasn't the intention. I started Ninja. It was one of those where it was so meant to be, but I had no idea.
Mm,
And I think that's one of those times in life where if your gut, your intuition, God, the universe, whatever that is for you is calling you to do something, you just have to do it. And I had no idea. I mean, I remember feeling, hey, that's what I'm supposed to do. And it just seemed crazy to me.
mm,
And to take that leap of faith going, okay, well, this is nuts. This is so out of characteristic for me to apply for some show, to do Ninja Warrior. I have no rock climber ninja background. Like it was so out of character, but I just couldn't shake that gut feeling that I was supposed to do that. And so it was definitely not intentional. But what's incredible about taking those leaps of faith is you have no idea all the good that's going to come from it.
Yeah.
And for me, I won't lie, the buzzers are really fun. It is a blast to finish courses. It's a blast to hit buzzers. But really, the best thing that has come out of my journey is just who I've become. And what you're referring to is so very distinctly, because we had gone on a trip before I applied for American Ninja Warrior, before I even knew what American Ninja Warrior was. We had gone to visit family in Hawaii. And I just remember the last picture we took on that trip. I'm sitting on one of the black lava rocks and I'm just looking out at the ocean. I turn around and they clicked a picture of me. And it's so funny because I haven't changed a whole lot in that picture. Um, I mean, I'm a little more ripped probably, but if you look at the picture, it still looks like me, right? And
Yeah.
usually when you see a before and after picture, it's a drastic makeover, right?
Right.
Either the hair, the makeup, they've lost weight, something like that. But when I look at that, there is a look in that Sandy's eyes that is not the same that you see today.
Mm,
And it was a look that I wasn't aware of in that eyes of things like I was really had a huge fear of failure.
mm,
I worried a lot about what other people would think or say. And I look at that picture and now I look at it, and I didn't know it at the time, but I just feel, God, that's such a sad version of me
mm.
that was living a half life. I was living a good life, but I really wasn't. I
Sure.
wasn't living just free.
Mm.
And so what Ninja Warrior, it's so funny. It was almost like exposure therapy where I had this huge fear of failure. So
Yeah.
what am I going to do? I'm going to go on a show where the failure rate is 100%. And
Yeah.
we are going to jump in and deal with this fear of failure, which I really didn't even know I had
Sure.
because I think I was so athletic that I had a lot of success at sports. Rarely did I not score a lot of points. Rarely did I not win a game. I just was super athletic. So that was a safe place because I had so much success there. But on Ninja Warrior, even though you're a wonderful athlete, anyone does it, the margin for error is so little. And
Yeah.
even the best of the best are going to fail. So I felt like I'm really strong. I'm really athletic. Let's go do this. And it just what it did is it magnified all of those little doubting, fearful voices in my head.
Mm.
But what was so incredible about becoming more aware of those voices is now you have the power to rewrite them.
Yeah.
And that's what I've spent the last 8 years doing is those little doubting voices will come up. And I'm like, let's challenge that. Is that really true? If I fail, are people going to think less of me? And those kind of beliefs. And so it's just been so incredible to grow that self-awareness of what is that dialogue in my head?
Yeah.
And is it truth or is it a lie? Is it healthy
Yeah.
or is it a coach or is it a critic? So all these kind of back and forth that I've had, and honestly, it is still so much a work in progress. I mean, even today I went to go speak and I had a little bit of that. I was surrounded by a couple of guys who have been speaking for over 10 years.
Mm.
And I'm like, I've been speaking full time for a year and a half. So I had a little bit of a freak out.
Yeah.
I am amongst these incredible speakers, like almost like, what are you doing here, Sandy moment. And so I still have some of those moments where that will creep up, and I got done with that, and I'm like, "Why did I do that?
Mm.
Why did I do that? I've worked hard to prepare for this talk. Go in with confidence, with your head up, shoulders back, chest out." And it's still a work in progress,
Sure.
but I've gotten much better at navigating all those voices, and that's the premise behind the before and after. It's like
Yeah.
this person living life, and now this person, like, just living life to the fullest. The ups, the downs, the wins and losses, and just embracing it all.
Absolutely. And when I heard you speak about that, like what I thought was so cool about that, you're pinpointing ninja as maybe this hinge point of helping you get there. And I think that's something that's really unique to ninja as a sport is it really puts kids and anybody who does it in that facing failure, right? We got to learn how to fail forward. So that's just a part of the process. And creating a healthy relationship with that. And I see how powerful that can be, especially through these kids programs and having kids do this very early on in their life to have that kind of exposure to learning how to face failure. And I didn't start ninja until I was like 16 or so, but I had a very similar experience with that was like, oh, I didn't play sports prior to. And ninja really was attractive to me because I was able to do it individually, do it for me, right? Not do it for a team or do it. It was just like it was my own progress. And that's what I liked about it. But it also just constantly forced me to fail. And that also has very much served me in being an entrepreneur because that's just life, right? And if you decide to step out and own your own business, you're definitely going to face a lot of failure with that too. So it has served me in a lot of ways. So my next question here is, I know you have a backyard course at your house. So do you run competitions on this, or is it more just like a recreational, like training for you?
So when I first started training for American Ninja Warrior, I there were no ninja gyms in all of Washington state.
Yeah.
And the closest ninja gym was in Boise, Idaho, which was over a 7-hour drive.
Mm,
And so that was just not realistic. I could go there occasionally for a tournament or something like that, but it wasn't something I just needed. I guess the great thing about not having it anywhere near is that if you really have a big dream and goal, you just have to pivot and you have to adapt and you have to adjust. Or you just go, woe is me. I don't have a gym near me and
yeah.
all these barriers. So I'm just not going to do it. So I
Sure.
guess for me, and that's probably the gritty and toughness that I learned in judo was that you just find a way. Yeah, we all have different obstacles and barriers that are going to get in the way of our dreams and goals. And chasing big dreams and goals is so messy, but you adjust and you pivot, and you find a way. And me finding a way was a really good excuse for building a whole lot of obstacles in the backyard. So I've hired a couple different builders, actually three different builders that have come out and helped build it, help grow it, help add some really cool, fun stuff. A lot of the stuff we have added in, but then the really like cool stuff that's like the show have been from actual builders and things that we have had people come out. But we have over 40 obstacles, pretty much almost every skill set that you could get on American Ninja Warrior in some way or fashion we have at our place, and it's just really cool because it's adjustable up and down, bigger or smaller distances, and so we train. The only thing is it's a weather dependent, so
Sure.
in the winter, the few winter months where you absolutely can't get on it, again, I adjust and pivot. I try to travel and go to at least one ninja gym in the winter, but it's pretty amazing to have it right out your back door, and
Oh yeah.
we've actually had a lot of people come train in our little place that have had a lot of success on the show. And I'm so proud of that. I thought we're not even an actual ninja gym. We do run classes a couple days a week in some open gyms. We do run some competitions. But this last season, I'm really proud. We had 4 people that train in my backyard that made it to the semifinals,
That's
and 2 out of those 4 made it to the Vegas finals.
so
It's a
cool.
backyard course that's not even actually a gym, and I'm really proud of that, and that we might not have a lot of people, and we not might not be in an actual really big gym, but we're turning out some incredible people and some incredible ninjas, so that's pretty fun.
Yeah, well, it sounds quality over quantity, right? Just being able to really invest in those people that do show up in your backyard and do show up to these classes. Is that an aspiration of yours?
Well, I've had a lot of people ask me about that, and a lot of investors and different people that run gyms or that plant gyms in different cities. And for me, I left teaching.
Mhm.
A teacher for 23 years, and I left teaching, and it was really difficult because I loved it, but I felt I couldn't teach and speak and do both really well. And I
Yeah.
felt like speaking, it was almost like teaching was wonderful, and that was where I was supposed to be. And I made a big impact on a lot of kids over those 23 years. But now I feel like I'm being called to go speak and coach and make an even bigger impact there. And it was one of those where I knew I couldn't do both well. And I am an all in girl. If I'm doing it, it is 100%. It drives some people crazy, but I think it's helped me be really successful. And as an entrepreneur, you can probably relate,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I'm just like an all in. And
Mm.
so I'm all in with coaching. I'm all in with the speaking right now. And I'm excited about how it's growing and the audiences that I'm getting to speak to and the stages that I'm getting to get on are really amazing. And so for now, I mean, it's nice to have it in the backyard and it's fun to have this really small, we call it our ninja family that train
Oh,
together,
that's
and I think for now, it is right where it's supposed to be.
that's awesome. And I'm sure it's nice to have good training grounds. I know that you were just on the American Ninja Warrior Women's Championship as of recently. It's interesting because now Ninja has evolved into a lot more gyms, a lot more programs, and the sport's grown. And now we have our first wave of this next generation of ninjas and these kids that grew up in the ninja gyms, right? Like your generation, they didn't have all the gyms. Like they didn't we were playing on playgrounds. And some of those concepts are absolutely still alive. But what do you think about this next generation of young ninja, especially like these young women going out and crushing these courses at 16 and 18 years old?
I think what really stands out with the young ones that are coming up is that it's you can see where those of us who have learned the sport as adults, and I won't speak for all of us, but I'm gonna speak for me, is that I have to think a lot. I have I feel like I really I mean, there's so many times and it feels like it's always an experiment out there where I'm trying to learn a new obstacle, and it's I will have to try 10, 20, maybe 100 different ways to do it, and it's like an experiment of, well, that's not the right way, and that's not the right way, and that's not the right way. And with kids, when you see kids that have grown up doing it, I think what really hits me is just how little they have to think. Like, it reminds me more
Huh.
of if I'm doing judo or basketball, I shut the brain off and I just go at it.
Yeah.
Where with ninja, I have to really think about it. I didn't grow up doing anything like it, not never flying through the air like that.
Yeah.
And that's what really stands out with me about ninjas, the young ones that have grown up doing it. It reminds me of how I play basketball. I don't think my body just does all these amazing, incredible things within less than a second reaction time. And watching those young kids and how they just are so smooth and so
Yeah.
efficient, like it's mind blowing. But it's also one of the things I love about this sport is how many sports do you get to learn from people of all different ages?
Yeah.
And I love that about this sport that it really is a connector in you could have in a competition a 6-year old all the way up to a 60-year-old, and you're all competing, you're all living like that same how do you prepare for the course? How do you attack the course? How do you stay mentally ready, physically? And you can
Yeah.
share things with each other. It's something so unique to the sport that you really don't get in other ones. But the
Absolutely.
young upcoming, woo, it's amazing. I love watching them.
You
I
too.
know they have talked about it becoming an Olympic sport,
Mhm.
and I think that absolutely needs to happen. I know there are people really fighting for that. In fact, last summer I got to get on the trial course for the Olympics,
Oh, cool.
and I feel like these young kids that have dedicated their life to this, man, they deserve that opportunity to showcase their talents to the world and see what they can do.
Yeah, and
And
have
it's
more end
amazing.
roads to end up at, more goals to shoot for, and that's one of these challenges of this industry is it's still so new, it's unstandardized, there's not
Yeah.
maybe parents are prioritizing basketball and these other sports because of paths forward, right, of scholarships and these other things. So I would absolutely love to see Ninja grow to that. But you spoke to something that really, like plucks my heartstring, I guess, of this sport is like, where can any other sport, I think the UNAA finals, right? I was on the board as the kid competitive director for the first couple years as that organization was getting started. And that was one of those missions was to create an area where the mom can compete and the dad can compete and the little brother and the little sister and where other sports where it's like you have the whole entire family able to get on the course and compete together and I think that there's just something so special about that of it really can be for everybody. And the leagues have tried to get to the point where they have different categories and help service different types of age groups of people. But I just love that it's like you can go to a world's competition and the whole family competes.
Yeah. I love
Oh,
that about this sport. There's a lot of really amazing, unique things about this sport. And I think the other part besides generations, it just brings so many different types of people together, people that you may not ever interact with in another part of your life. But here you are doing ninja together alongside people that you may never have met before. But it is a unique sport in that, and it's a really special part of this sport.
yeah. Absolutely. I had a again, I was doing some research for this interview and you were talking about you have your voices of like little Sandy and big Sandy. And you made a statement that stuck with me that said, little Sandy protected me because she was very cynical of the world. And of course we want to listen to the big Sandy, to the encourager voice in our head. But I think in today's society, there's a lot of victim mindset, and so, do you think that it's possible to find value in what little Sandy is saying to maybe have it encourage us instead of being a victim of it?
Yeah, when you were saying that, it made me think of a story with Barclay Stockett,
Mm,
and it was pretty early in my ninja journey. It was actually before I'd even hit a buzzer, and we were at a ninja competition in California, and what struck me is that I was just watching her and her ability to, if anyone knows her, she is just the sweetest, kindest person. And I'm watching her and she lives so free. She's
mm,
going up and just like air hugging people and interacting with people. And at that point, I was still, and I'm still working on it. I'm better than I was, but very guarded.
mm,
And I needed that as a child. And me being guarded was what helped protect me. It helped keep me safe.
yeah,
And I think at that ninja competition, when I was watching her, it was so funny. I'm just sitting there watching her and in really envy of
yeah,
how free she was. And this visual just came popping in my head of me sitting at the bottom of a well.
mm,
And I'm sitting there at the bottom of the well, and it's like this voice just, Sandy, before you needed those walls to protect you. And now what that walls are doing is trapping you in. And here you are sitting at the bottom of this well, trapped in there. And then the thought of, Sandy, 99% of people are good people. You're always going to have some bad apples out there.
sure.
And how it really encouraged me to let the walls down because now those walls were trapping me in. And so I think for me, a lot of times my little Sandy voice served its purpose, but for the most part, I feel like if you can picture a car, I want Big Sandy to be the one at the wheel. I want Big
Yeah,
Sandy to be sitting in the driver's seat, driving the car, directing the car. However, little Sandy will always be a part of who I am. It's
yeah,
made me who I am. So I feel like she can sit in the back seat. She's allowed to be in the car but I'm not going to let her touch the steering wheel.
mm,
And
okay,
there's been a lot of healing that little Sandy has needed to do around safety and that. But I love little Sandy.
mm,
And I think what I'm doing now in going through and getting some therapy that I really should have gotten as a child is I'm going back and getting to heal those little parts of me. So
yeah,
little Sandy can know that she's safe now.
mm,
And what were the things that she need to be loved? Did she need to be told it was okay? So she is still a huge part of me. I think she makes me who I am. I think she also makes me very empathetic and
yeah.
understanding of others. And I would never want to get rid of her. I just don't want her to make all the decisions.
Absolutely. But I love just to be able to pinpoint this does have value and this can make bigger Sandy better and
Yeah.
being able to recognize that. I love that. So as an avid parent, backyard course owner, athlete in the industry, what would you want to see more out of the industry for ninja specifically?
Hmm. I do think you had mentioned something about there's not really a standardized, it just hasn't, it's a new sport. So that standardized, like when you go to say gymnastics. One thing that's amazing to me, and this is, you see it in soccer, you see it in rock climbing, how things are more done at levels. And I think if ninja becomes so difficult, you're going to lose a lot of people. And
Absolutely.
if there was some way to fairly make it more leveled, say you go to a gymnastics meet, like I didn't know a lot about gymnastics, but for some reason, that's one place where I've gone and spoken to a lot of gymnastic
Mm,
places or
yeah.
different meets. And one thing I've been blown away at is that their system is unbelievable. You compete alongside people that are just about your skill level. And you think about any sport, that's where we grow, that's where we learn, that's where we improve. We are being challenged. We might have some failure and some hiccups along the way, but it's not so much that it's like you're not getting any obstacles. You got 0 out of 20. Congratulations. That's so discouraging.
Totally.
Where if we can make it a little more regulated, where you're designing courses where they're going to test ninjas and challenge them. I'm not saying they have to get the course, but they're also going to have some success and not feel defeated, but then also where you so in gymnastics, I love it. It's once you win a certain amount at that level, you go up the next level. And I think, isn't that what life's really about? Is like you level up
Yeah.
and then you struggle and then you level up and then you struggle and you level up. And I think that's what's got me really good at a lot of things. And if Ninja could somehow be that way, so people beginning aren't intimidated, they're not going to go in and get 0 out of 20 obstacles. They'll have some success. It'll also be challenging. But
Mm.
then also the people who are at that level that need that, they can be the elite ninjas. Gymnastics has that where they're at their level. And I just wish that someone way smarter than me
Mm.
could figure
Uh-huh.
out a system where that's how we did it, that it was more like gymnastics. And once you win a certain amount of meets, level up and then you keep
Sure.
doing that. And that way, I think people would love the sport. I think people would continue with the sport more.
Mm.
And you would get also people challenged because you also don't want them bored. If I make a course and I try to keep it middle road, here's the problem with that. The news people are gonna get maybe any.
Yeah.
And then the people on lead are bored to death, and I
Yeah.
see that in my backyard. But that's what we are forced to do right now.
Sure.
What if someone could figure out a way that we could have these levels and people get to move up once they have a lot of success, and then they learn to struggle again and work through it and then level up again, and I just love that idea.
I think it's totally applicable, and I know that you're talking about it in, like, a competitive sense, right? Of this is what we wanna see a competition look like, but I think that this starts at the foundation of the programming, and how are we creating these ninjas? Do they have a level system to keep these kids going through their program instead of either quitting before they start, right? Because I know there's a lot of gyms out there that we've been to that they want all the biggest, flashiest stuff that the kids that are on the show, and there is an appeal to that, and there is people that are gonna do that, but is your seven-year-old really gonna be able to do a salmon ladder? And we have to ask ourselves those questions, I think, as gym owners and people who are creating programming of how are we gonna bring this down to a level so that we can really meet a core audience of kids that are really like 5 to 7 years old. And so I think that not only could it really service the competitive level, but gyms who think about the progression systems and the levels inside their gym and inside their curriculum and their programming really help create amazing athletes because they're challenged at each one of those levels. So I love that insight. Sandy, I got one last question for you. And this is specific to you were on an interview with Mr. Zach Arnold. I think it was back in like 2021, and you were talking about how you're getting ready to make the leap of leaving the teaching job that you love and speak full time. And so now you said you've been doing it for a year and a half now. So how is that decision gone for you in hindsight? And, what are some of the challenges that you've faced so far, and what are some of the successes that you've been able to come out of it with?
Well, that would depend on what day you ask me. And I
Sure.
think if you have the heart of an entrepreneur, you completely know that. And I think a lot of ninjas understand that and probably what's drawn them to the sport. But it is definitely one of those things where it has been so exciting and so rewarding. And I 100% know without a doubt that this is where I'm supposed to be and this is what I'm supposed to be doing
I love that.
and crafting my stories, sharing my stories, seeing the impact that it's having on all the different groups that I've gone to speak to. I mean, it's just mind blowing to me some days. And I'm like, I can't believe that I am doing this as a living now. But then there are also freak out days where I'm back there on the verge of tears, having a mental breakdown. Cause I'm like, it's so different than teaching in the business side of it and how much I have to learn
Mhm.
about running a business and all the little things that go into that, doing invoices, what kind of insurance do you have as a I mean, it is a long list. And sometimes I kid you not, I don't even know enough to know what questions to ask is
Sure.
what I've
You
had.
don't know what you don't know.
Yes. And so I think I have some of those days too, but I think just knowing that I am going to live without regret and wonder
Hmm.
is the most powerful thing. And I think, gosh, if I had stayed in teaching, I still would have had an impact, but not like I'm having now. I would have had regret and wonder. And
Yes.
that to me is far worse than the ups and downs of figuring out how to run a business, the ups and downs of now with teaching, you have a check that you get every month that you count on. You show up, you're 8 to 4 and you get paid. And so with this, it's just so different. It
Yeah.
is so different. And it's not that steadiness, but I feel it's really funny in life how all these different life experiences you have can do just lead you to where you're at currently. And I look back on all this and I think the Sandy before American never would have had the guts or the courage to step out on her own and run her own business and become a speaker. And that is such a value to me that has come from that journey is that courage, that confidence to do this. And I never would have been able to do that before. And so, yep, there are good days and bad days, and I'm figuring out.
Yeah.
But I've had some incredible experiences. I actually, this last week, booked two of the biggest gigs I've ever had.
Mm.
And so I'm really excited about that. I compared it to, I thought it almost felt like getting the call 'cause I booked
Oh,
one of my
cool.
biggest gigs ever,
Yeah.
and I mean, I was on the phone trying to like, "Okay, don't get too excited, they're gonna think you're nuts," but so I mean, it did, it felt like getting the call for A&W of just and what's so funny, it always seems timely. Every time I start to wonder, "Was this the right choice, Sandy? Is this where you're
Yeah.
supposed to be?" A breakthrough thing like that will happen, and it was just so timely, and I thought, this keeps happening." This isn't a coincidence. I'm where I'm
Oh,
supposed
yeah.
to be, doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and it's all gonna work out, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Love that that's what's been your experience so far. I appreciate your boldness and your courage to step out and do it, and I'm looking forward to see what all comes of it. But Sandy, thank you so much for hopping on with me today and your super valuable insights to the ninja industry and what you bring to your community of people. Sandy, why don't you end with how can people get in touch with you?
Sure, probably the best place for all my links is just to go to my website. It's just sandyzimmerman.co, and it'll give you links for Instagram. That's probably where I try to keep up the most. I could definitely do a better job of that, but and then on Facebook, but that would probably be the best bet. I do put some of my videos on YouTube. Mostly there's some ninja stuff, but a lot of speaking stuff now is starting to come out there. But my website would probably be the best bet for everybody to get a hold of me. And I eventually, I maybe not in a timely manner, but I do get to my messages. And so if people want to connect with me on Instagram, you will hear back from me. No promises that it's going to be timely, but you will hear back from me. I appreciate just all the love and support that I've gotten from people with Ninja and with speaking. It's just been incredible. So I really appreciate all of that. I appreciate you having me on today. And can you share a little bit more about my story and my journey on Ninja Warrior and everything else in life? So thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sandy.